Most gardeners spend 3 months harvesting tomatoes in summer, celebrate like they've won the lottery, then watch their garden turn into an empty wasteland for the next 9 months while they hand over hundreds of dollars every week at the grocery store. But there is a planting system that produces fresh food every single week of the year from the exact same plot of ground without needing more space, without expensive greenhouses, and without any complicated technology. And the families using this system right now aren't just saving money. They're eating better food than anything you can buy while their neighbors are stuck paying $5 for a head of lettuce that was picked 2 weeks ago. Here's what nobody tells you about year-round food production. The problem isn't your climate. It's not your soil. It's not even your experience level. The problem is that everything you've been taught about gardening is designed to fail 9 months out of the year. Because conventional gardening treats planting like it's a single event that happens in spring. You plant everything in May. You harvest in August. Then you're done until next year, but that's not how nature works. And it's definitely not how food security works. Let me show you what is possible when you stop treating your garden like a hobby and start treating it like a production system that never stops running. Imagine walking into your garden in January, snow on the ground, frost everywhere, and you reharvesting fresh kale and spinach for dinner while your neighbors are buying wilted greens at the store for $8 a pound. Then March arrives, you're cutting lettuce, pulling radishes, picking peas, all from the same beds that gave you greens in January. May comes, those lettuce beds are now producing beans. The peach trellis is holding tomatoes and carrots are growing in the gaps. By July, tomatoes are fruiting, beans are producing continuously. And you're already planting fall crops in the spaces where spring crops finished. October arrives and most gardens are dead, but yours? You're harvesting winter squash, pulling beets, and cutting fresh chard while planting garlic and onions for next year. This isn't fantasy. This is how gardens work when you understand one simple truth that changes everything. Time is not your enemy. Time is your tool. And when you learn to use time strategically, your garden stops being seasonal and becomes perpetual. Here's how it works. The system has a name, succession planting. But don't let the fancy term fool you. This is ancient knowledge that's been feeding families for thousands of years. The core principle is brutally simple. As one crop finishes, another takes its place. Nothing sits empty, nothing goes to waste. The soil works every single day of the year. But here's where most people get it wrong. They think succession planting means planting more. It doesn't. It means planting smarter by understanding that different crops have different schedules and different temperature preferences. Some crops love cold, some crops need heat, some grow fast, some grow slow. When you match the right crop to the right season and stagger your plantings so they mature at different times, you create an endless harvest cycle that feeds you year-round. Let me break down exactly how this works in practice. Strategy 1: Understanding days to maturity. Every crop has a clock. From the day you plant the seed to the day you harvest the food, there's a specific number of days. Radishes, 25 days. Lettuce, 45 days. Bush beans, 55 days. Tomatoes, 90 days. This number is everything because it tells you when food will be ready. If you plant radishes today, you'll be eating them in less than a month. If you want radishes every week for the next 6 months, you don't plant one big row. You plant a small row every 2 weeks. Same with lettuce, same with beans. Same with any crop that you want continuously instead of all at once. This is where conventional gardening fails. People plant all their lettuce on one day. 2 months later, they have more lettuce than they can possibly eat. It goes bad, they waste it, then they have nothing for the rest of the year. Succession planting fixes this by matching production to consumption. Small, frequent plantings that mature one after another so you always have fresh food and nothing goes to waste. Strategy 2: Fast crops with slow crops. Some vegetables mature quickly, others take months. The genius move is planting them together so the fast crops use the space while the slow crops are still small. then get harvested before the slow crops need the room. Here's the perfect example. Tomatoes take 90 days to fruit. Lettuce takes 45. Plant lettuce between your tomato seedlings in spring. By the time the tomatoes are big enough to shade the ground, you've been cutting lettuce for 6 weeks and it's done. The tomatoes never noticed. They had plenty of space when they needed it. But you got a bonus crop of lettuce from the same bed. Radishes and carrots work the same way. Plant them together. Radishes are ready in 3 weeks. Pull them. Carrots keep growing for 3 months without any competition. To crops from the same space, no extra work, just smart timing. Strategy 3. Temperature zones. This is the secret that unlocks year-round production. Some crops don't just tolerate cold, they prefer it. Spinach, kale, lettuce, peas, all the brassicas like cabbage and broccoli. These crops actually taste better in cool weather. They grow faster when it's cold. And they can handle frost that would kill tomatoes and peppers in minutes. Other crops need heat. Tomatoes, peppers, beans, squash, they won't even germinate in cold soil. Conventional gardens plant everything in May when soil warms up. But succession gardens have cool season crops already producing in March because they were planted in February under simple protection. Then summer crops take over in June, and when August arrives, cool season crops go back in for fall and winter harvest. You're not fighting the seasons, you're using them. Cold weather becomes an advantage instead of an obstacle. Strategy 4. Succession within the same crop. This is where production becomes constant instead of sporadic. Instead of planting all your lettuce on one day, you plant a small amount every 2 weeks from March through September. The result, you're always cutting fresh lettuce, always. There's no gap, no feast or famine, just consistent harvest week after week after week. Beans work the same way. Carrots, beets, any crop that tastes best fresh or stores poorly gets planted in succession. You're recreating a harvest schedule that matches how your family actually eats instead of overwhelming yourself with too much at once and then having nothing for months. Strategy 5. Relay planting. This is the advanced move that keeps production seamless. You start the next crop before the current one finishes, transplanting seedlings into gaps while the previous crop is still producing its final harvest. Here's how it works. You're growing winter greens in February. By March they're almost done, but you started tomato seedlings indoors in January. In April, as you harvest the last of those greens, you transplant foot-tall tomato plants into that bed. They're already growing, already strong. By the time the bed is fully cleared, the tomatoes are established and flowering. You didn't lose a single week of production. The bed transitions smoothly from one crop to another without any downtime. This is how professional market gardens operate. And it's how your garden should operate if you want year-round food. Strategy 6. Cut and come again crops. Some crops produce once and you're done. Others keep producing for months if you harvest them correctly. Lettuce, chard, kale, many herbs. You harvest by cutting outer leaves while the plant keeps growing new ones from the center. A single planting of kale can produce for 6 months. You don't need constant succession plantings. You need one good planting and proper harvesting technique. This reduces work while increasing yield. The best kind of efficiency. Strategy 7. Season extension. This is the tool that adds weeks or even months to both ends of your growing season. Cold frames, row covers, simple hoop houses. These are not complicated or expensive. They're just protection from frost and wind that moderates temperature swings. A cold frame is literally a bottomless box with a clear lid. It captures solar heat during the day and protects plants at night. This simple device can keep lettuce and spinach producing through winter in climates where they normally freeze solid. It can start crops weeks earlier in spring when unprotected plants would die. You're not changing the climate, you're creating a microclimate. And that microclimate extends your harvest from 6 months to 10 or even 12. Now here's what these 7 strategies look like in actual numbers. A conventional garden with one spring planting produces food for 3 months of the year, maybe 4 if you're lucky. A succession-planted garden using the same space produces for 9 to 12 months depending on your climate. That is 3 to 4 times more food from identical space just by changing when and how you plant. A single 4 by 20-foot bed managed with succession planting produces 40 to 60 pounds of vegetables per year instead of the 15 to 20 pounds from a single planting. And it does this by keeping the soil working instead of letting it sit idle 9 months out of 12. But numbers only tell part of the story. Let me show you what this looks like month by month so you can see the entire cycle. January. Most gardens are frozen wastelands. Yours has cold hardy kale and spinach ready to harvest. Pea seedlings are emerging between the greens. Garlic is developing underground. You're harvesting while everyone else is buying. February, you plant more peas, more greens. You start tomatoes and peppers indoors by a sunny window. March, greens are producing heavily, peas are climbing. You plant lettuce, radishes, carrots, the beds are filling up. April, greens transition to lettuce. Peas are flowering, carrots are sizing up. You transplant tomatoes and peppers to larger pots indoors. May, lettuce is being cut continuously. Peas are producing pods you eat straight off the vine. You plant beans where early greens finished. Tomatoes and peppers go outside after last frost. June. Peas finish, beans start producing. Lettuce is done in the heat. Tomatoes are flowering. You plant fall crops where spring crops finished. July. Tomatoes and peppers are fruiting. Beans are producing non-stop. You harvest carrots. Plant more fall greens. The garden is in full production. August, peak harvest. Tomatoes by the bucket, beans by the handful. Summer squash by the armload. You're preserving surplus while planting fall and winter crops. September, summer crops slow down. Fall crops accelerate. You're still harvesting tomatoes, but also cutting fresh fall lettuce and pulling beets. October, first frost kills summer crops. But fall crops don't care. Kale, chard, cabbage all keep producing. You plant garlic for next year. November, most gardens are done. Yours is just getting started with winter production. Hardy greens under row covers. Root crops still in the ground. December, you're harvesting fresh kale from under snow, pulling carrots and beets. Planting next year while eating from this year. This is the cycle. This is what year-round production looks like when you stop thinking of planting as an event and start thinking of it as a continuous process. But here's the question everyone asks. What about climate? Can this really work everywhere? The answer is yes, but the crops change. In warm climates, you're growing year-round without any protection. In cold climates, you're using season extension to bridge the gaps. The principle stays the same: match crops to seasons. Plant in succession, keep the soil working. A garden in Florida looks different from a garden in Maine, but both can produce 12 months a year using the same strategies adapted to local conditions.